Hello and welcome to Upstack America's Oracle EBS Financial Functional Training. My name is Bob and I'm the lead senior consultant for Upstack America. And with me today I have Victor, who is also a senior consultant. And today we are handling General Ledger Lesson 52. And Victor, please walk us through.
Thank you, Bob, for the introduction, and welcome to Lesson 52 of our Oracle Functional Training Series. In this lesson, we are going to look at how to create percentage rows or columns in an FSG report. This is maybe one of the needs a client might have. They might want to see percentages of some data displayed in a row on a column, and we can use the FSG tool to create reports which display information of this type. So we already know what columns and rows are. Our rows are defined by our row set, sorry. So rows, these ones are defined by the row set, this green part, and our columns are defined by the column set, for which we define this top part. Okay. So, what is an example of a percentage column, and what would it look like? So let's look at this example on the screen. So we have a report here, and say this report shows the number of employees for a particular company, and this head count is shown in terms of department. All right. So we have department 1, 2, and 3, and we have head counts for January, February, and March. However, the client also wants to see a percentage, okay, a percentage column. So in this case, maybe we can assume that we are running this. March is the period of interest, okay? So that is why we want to see percentage from March point of view, or as of March, right? But it can also display the numbers for the previous periods. But for now, let's just focus on March. So try to ignore these two columns. So how do we read this report? So Department 1 could have numbers for January, maybe 8 or 9. And Department 2 will have numbers for January and February and March 2, and Department 3 will also have numbers for January, February, and March. Okay, when we read it from top down, we can have the total number of employees, assuming these are all the departments in the company. We can have the total number of employees for January. We can have the total number of employees for February, and we can have the total numbers of employees for March. All right. However, now the client wants to see the percentage of the total number of employees in each department for March. Okay. So, for example, for Department 1 in March, there are 10 employees. For Department 2 in March, there are also 10 employees, and for Department 3 in March, there's also 10 employees. So the total number of employees in the company is 30. Okay. But now the client wants to know in terms of percentage what number of clients are in each department. All right. So they'll have a column here that shows that information. All right. So how do you calculate this percentage? So for example, for Department 1, it will be 10 divided by 30 times 100, which is 33.3%. And you do the same for the rest of the departments. Okay. So that is what a report with a percentage column would look like. All right. Now, for our example in the system, we are not going to use headcount. Instead, we are going to use budget amounts. Okay. So what we are going to have is accounts defined by the row set. Okay. And then we are going to have our columns. They are going to be column budget columns, and each period is going to have, or we're going to have a period, each period with budget amounts dedicated to that particular account. All right. Now, what we would like to see in the percentage column is what is the total, what for a particular period. All right, let me start this way. So the total will show the total row will show the total budget amounts committed to all accounts by the company. All right. So actually, what we'll have is we'll have our row set will define asset and expense accounts. All those accounts will have budget amounts. Okay. So we'll want to see for each account the budget amount dedicated to it. What percentage is it of the total? All right. So it's the same concept. We are just using different kind of figures. All right. This was for explanation of what a percentage column is. Now, as we are going to see, the percentage column, we can think of it as mainly just a display column. Okay, so what do I mean by that? Of course, there are calculations that need to be done by the system in order to arrive at these percentages. So the system has to do this 10 divided by 30 and this 10 divided by 30. Okay, all right. So we are going to see how to tell the system how to do that. But after those calculations are done, then this column is basically just a display column, and we are going to see exactly what I mean when we're defining this column in our column set, right? So this is a very redacted way of showing how to create a percentage column. We're going to see exactly each step when we go to the system. But basically, what we need to do is we need to assign the total value row as a denominator for each of the other individual rows in the row set. Okay, we are creating a percentage column, but the calculations are taking part, we are seeing them in terms of rows. That sounds a bit confusing, but hopefully by the end of this, it will be more clear, all right? So we need to tell the system that the total value row should be used as the denominator for each of the other individual rows so that we can arrive at the percentages. So let's go back to this. What am I trying to say? I'm trying to say that we have this total value row, which adds up all this information that we provide here. We are going to create this row in our row set, and we are going to say that the numbers obtained here are obtained through calculation. It's going to be a calculation row, and it's going to be a total of the information in the other rows for the other row definitions. What this statement means, assign total value row as the denominator for each of the other individual rows, is that we need to tell Oracle that this total value row is the denominator when we are creating the percentages. So it means that whatever value is here is going to be divided by whatever total value is here, then multiplied by 100 to come to this figure of this percentage figure. All right. So for each of these rows, the total row is the denominator, right? Because we're doing 10 divided by 30, then 10 divided by 30, and 10 divided by 30. If this was 20, we would have done 20 divided by 30, and then this maybe is 5 divided by 30, and this is 5 divided by 30. So the total value row is the denominator that is used in the calculations. So the values are displayed column-wise. You know, they're restricted in this column, but the calculations are based like row-wise, right? We are looking at the values per row, finding the percentages, and then displaying them in this column. So what we need to do in our column set is just create a column where the percentage values will be displayed. However, the mathematics of it all is going on at the row set level. So let's head on immediately to Oracle so that we don't get lost in the details and we understand exactly what we mean. So I'm going to log in. Now I have created the row set and the column set that we are going to use already. So you just need to, we already know how to create a row set and a column set. So you just need to create one for yourself, as I have done, and I'm going to show them to you. So let's start with the column set. And let me query. All right, so this is the column set that I created to use for this particular lesson. So let's go and see what it looks like. So this column set has two columns, okay? So the first column is going to show, let me go back to the slide. So you can think of the first column as this part here, without this January and February. We're not going to do multiple periods. You're just going to do one period, okay? So you can think of this as our first column, and this is going to be our percentage column, okay? So that's these two, okay? So it's going to show budget amounts. Here are the headings. For budgets, remember we have to do what? We have to assign control values so that we can later on tell the system which budget we are using, okay? As you can see, this this is our percentage column. There are no amount types to be displayed. There's no offset or all that. All we need is a heading, okay? Because the figures which are going to be populated in this column, we are going to specify them at the row set level. So what I did, the only unique thing I did for this column is, one, for the heading, I have indicated that it is a percentage column. Okay, so you can see this is a percent sign. And for the format mask, I have added a percent sign at the end, so that the figures which are populated in that column have this percentage sign, to make it more clear that this is a percent column. All right, so that's our column set. Let's go and look at the row set. So reports, define row set. Query Maskani. And let's see the row definitions. The row set that I created is this one, Maskani assets and expenses. So the first row definition is asset accounts. I have done the account assignments. I have done this for company 1, and these are the asset accounts. Then the second row assignment is, row definition is expense account, and it has its account assignments, the 5,000 series for expense. So we should create something like this. And then I have the total. All right, how did I do the total? It's a calculation. Okay, so we are adding the figures from row definition 10 through plus row definition 20. Okay, now we said that in order to create a percent column, we have to do what? We have to assign total value row as the denominator for each of the other individual rows in the row set. So how do we do that? Let's go up to the first definition. So if you come here, you will see percent of row field. Okay, so what this means is that this line definition, asset accounts, if you ever create a percentage column, then this line definition will be a percentage of row, which one? Row 30, right? Because row 30 is the total value. Okay, so if you ever create a percentage column, then the asset accounts should be calculated as a percentage of row 30. Okay, and then we need to do the same for the second row definition. So this is 32, and we can do the same for our total value row, which will just give us a value of 100%. Excuse me. Okay, so that's how we assign the denominator. So what we are basically saying is that when we are calculating percentages, this is going to be the denominator. So let's save our work. Okay, so I've just remembered something else I didn't mention about the column set. Our column set is this. So instead of going to build column set, let's go to define columns. So this is our first one. We only have 2 columns, and this is our second one. All right. While technically the calculations are based on figures like row wise, we still have to tell Oracle that whatever is being displayed in this column is a percentage of what? Are percentage figures, okay? So if you come to calculations, right? So you need to enter 10. So let's make this a bit clearer by going back to our slide. So we need to tell Oracle that these percentage figures are from this column, okay? Because these percentage figures are coming from this column. Although we are going down row wise, but we are calculating percentages for the figures which appear in this column. So we know that these figures are derived from an intersection of what we provide in our row set and in our column set, okay? But we need to tell Oracle that what is being displayed here is coming from this particular column, not this one or not this one, okay? So let's go back to Oracle. And what we are going to do is enter 10, all right? That's our first sequence number. For the operator, instead of using the enter, here we are going to use percentage, okay? And then we are going to select the column. Of course, 10 is the only other column, so we can only use 10 here, all right? So that's good, and let's save that. I don't know whether I saved that. Yes, okay. Now I'm confused. I don't know what happened. So define columns. Okay, so you don't want another column. I don't know whether. All right, so we are good. So that's the first column, and that's the second column. And the second column should have calculations that show percentage for column 10. Okay, so we're good. So now we have done everything. We can go and define a report. So we can call this report Maskani asset and expenses budget, right? And we can have that title there too. What row set do we want to use? We want to use the Maskani asset and expenses row set, and we want to use the Maskani budget and percentage column set. All right. Let's enter a row order here so that we have a good report. We also need to do control values, right? Because we have a budget report here. So control value 1, we need Maskani corporate. I believe we should have our budget amounts entered. So let's go to run report. Yes, I want to save my work. And we are going to run this for October. There's nothing else we need to attach. No, so let's submit this. This is our request ID. Let's wait for our report to complete now, and it's been completed. Now, as you can see, we have our percentage column here. The percentage sign didn't work as well as I hoped it would. It's really small, but you can see here. You can see the budget name. You can see the period. These are the accounts affected in that period. So for cash account, for company one, these are the amounts, and you can see these are the percentages. All right. So what does this mean? This means 580 is 53.70% of what? Of 1080, right? 100 is 9.26% of 180, right? So basically what this percentage column has done is it has taken each of these figures, divided it by the total, and then displayed the percentage in this column, right? It's as simple as that. And what we just need to do is create this column, indicate that it's displaying percentages for its sister column here, and we need to tell Oracle that this total value row is the one that's going to be used as the denominator. And when we do that, we have our what? We have our FSG report with percentage columns. So now let's go to percentage rows and how to do them. So in terms of the logic, concept is the same, right? We need to specify a denominator. We need to have a percent row in this case, and we need to display. We need to tell Oracle that row, percent row, is displaying percentages from another particular row. So now let's try to make sense out of this report. So we have periods at the top in our column set, and we have departments here, okay? So department 1 had these figures for January, February, and March. You can assume maybe this is a quarterly kind of report. So for the first 3 months, we can also assume it's for the whole year. Maybe that makes more sense. But so these are the figures for department 1, and these are the figures for department 2. Down here, in this case, we have two total. We have a total row and we have a total column, and we're going to see how to use them. All right. So in January, right? Okay, let me start this way. The best way to make sense of this report or to think about it, you can think about it maybe as the number of employees added every month. It's not very important to the logic of what we are doing, but so that the explanation can be more clear, okay? So anyway, so we can say that in January, this is the total number of employees that were added, and then in February, this is the total number of employees that were added, and in March, these were the total number of employees that were added. That's across the department, okay? But if you want to look at it, so we can say that's period-wise across all departments. But if you want to look at it department-wise across all periods, then you go as per the row. Okay, so for department 1 in January, they added 10 employees. In February, they added 10 employees, and in March they added 10 employees. So in that quarter, Department 1 added 30 employees. The same for Department 2. The whole company in January added 20 employees, in February 20 employees, and in March 20 employees. So that's what this report means, okay? So what would this percent row represent, okay? So this percent row would represent the number of employees added across the whole company per period, right? So this 60 here, this 60 is what? So 30 plus 30, when you do 30 plus 30, this 60 here will show you the total number of employees added in the company from January through March, okay? But, and also if you do it this way, it will also show you the same thing. But when you're going this way, you're doing per period. When you're going this way, you're doing per department, okay? So this percentage period, this percentage row is, for example, for January 20 divided by what? By 60. And that will tell us that in January, we added, of this total employees added for the whole quarter, in January, we added 33.3%. And in February, we also added 33.3%. And so is the case for March. All right. So now to create a percentage row, we need to assign the total value column as the denominator. Okay, so this time it's flipped, right? So for when you're creating a percentage row, we need to assign the total value column as the denominator for each of the other columns. This should say columns. Sorry, so this should say columns. So assign total value column as the denominator for each of the other individual columns in the column set. All right, so what does that mean? So in this case, we are going 20 divided by 60, 20 divided by 60, and 20 divided by 60, all right? So we are reporting okay, so let me make it clear. So you remember how in our row set, in our percentage column, we had these two columns empty, all right? So I want you to think about it in the same way. So you can think about maybe as this first column as empty. Okay, I know the figures won't make sense, but it's the same thing. So here, if we wanted to see maybe department 2 alone, and here the total was 60, then here the total would be 10, here 10, here 10, and then this would be 30. So we are divided 10 divided by 30, 10 divided by 30, 10. So it's like we have flipped our percentage column, okay? So we have basically, if you turn this report upside down, all right? Not upside down, but counterclockwise, so that this percent row is like the percent column. It's basically the same thing as this, all right? only now we are going this way along the columns. So we need to tell Oracle that to get this percentage figure, we are using this as the denominator, okay? And then we are dividing each of these individual values by this denominator to get this percentage. We also need to tell Oracle that this percent row is going to display percentage figures from this total row. Okay. So we have two total types of data, but the concept is the same. Okay. So let's go to Oracle and take care of that. So we are going to use the same row set, right? We are going to use the same row set, but we are going to create a new column set. And in our row set, we are just going to modify it and add a percent row. Then we are going to create a column set that has budget amounts for maybe 2 periods plus the total. Okay. So just like the previous example, we're not using an example that shows number of employees, but rather budget amounts. Okay, so let's start with the column set. Let's see what we have. We have that, we have that, and we have that. So let's see the amounts. Let's see what this one has. Anyway, I wanted to auto copy, but we can just create one really quickly. So we can call this Maskani budget amounts. Okay, and let's build the column set. So the first one, we want the amounts to be PTD budget. We actually have PTD budget right there, and we can use this as offset of -1. Let's add a new column. This will be sequence 20. We also want this to be PTD budget. The offset for this will be 0. We also need another column, sequence 30, right? This column will be a total column. Okay, so this column will be a total column for all these other ones. All right. Let's create a default heading. Okay, so that looks good. You can see that's total. Actually, get rid of that. Right, so that's our column set. We need to enter control values for these two because they're showing budget amounts. So we'll use control value 1 for that. And for this, we can also use control value 1. So our column set looks good. So let's save that. Let's go to define columns so that this third column can be total. Let's say that, let's do it as a calculations. Okay. So sequence 1, we can do this in 2 steps where we say enter, and then we do the first column and then we do the second column, or we can just do enter, then we enter the range. Instead of doing the addition, we just enter the range. So the first column is 10 through to 20. Okay, so this is the same as doing 10, 10, and then coming here and doing 20, enter the addition, and then enter the second column, right? So we can change this to 20, and that is the same as summing those 2 columns up. And let's save. All right. So what is the other thing that we need to do? We need to assign the total value column as the denominator for each of the other individual columns in the column set. So our total value column is what? Is this sequence 30, okay? So we need to assign these other 2 columns to be the percentages, of that column. So percent of column 30 and percent of column 30, and this one 2% of column 30, and save that. So our column set is fine. Let's go to our row set. If I can find it right there. The row set that we used was Maskani assets and expenses, define rows. So we already have definitions for this. Okay. So we can remove this percent of row figures. So now we want to add a new row. This is what we want to add. We already have these 3. Now we want to add this, where the percentage figures will be displayed. So this is line 40, and this is percentage. Okay. So that's good. What is the other thing we need to show? We can enter the format mask because we want to show percentage figures there. Then we can indicate here we want to see percentages, so we can enter something like 999 like that, 0.999, and then a percentage sign. So this basically says to display figures like this way, 2 decimal points and a percentage symbol. Okay, and then the other thing we need to do is to tell Oracle that this column is displaying percentage figures for this, okay, for this total value, right? So the mathematics again is 20 divided by 60 displayed here, 20 divided by 60 displayed here, 20 divided by 60 displayed here, and 60 divided by 60 displayed here, right? So we need to tell Oracle that what is being displayed here is percentages derived from figures in this row. How do we do that? Calculations, 10% of what column? Of row 30. Yeah. So that looks good. Let's save. And now we can go and define a report from these two column set and row set that we have defined. So let's define report. Actually, we can use the report that we had last time and just change the column set. Okay, I believe this is that report, and what we need to change now is the column set. Which is the column set that we created, budget amounts. Row set remains the same. We will keep our row order. Let's look at the control values. That's fine because these are from the initial report, and we haven't changed the budget. So every column with control value 1 will display Mascani corporate budget. So let's go ahead and run the report. Yes. Okay. We're going to run this for October and click on submit. Let's wait for this to complete, and we'll see what we get in our report. All right, view output, and there you have it. All right, so what happened? So in the first column, we have budget amounts for September because our period of interest was October. So -1 offset gives us September. These are the budget amounts, right? This is the total column that is showing 530 plus 580 is 1,110, 100 plus 100, okay? Then we have another total row here that's adding these figures going column-wise. Been going down like this row-wise, okay? But what the percentage now is showing is, for example, in September, for these two periods, all right, the total budget amounts for September are 48.82% of the total budget amounts for these two periods. So the total budget amounts for these two periods are 1030 plus 1080, which gives us 2,110. Okay, so 1030 divided by 2110 gives you 48.82, and 1080 divided by this gives you 51.8. So this is how you can create a report with a percentage row, and this here was our percentage column. So that's basically it for percentage rows and columns. So basically, remember what you need to do is you have to have either a row or a column where the percentages are being displayed, and you have to specify the denominator row or column, all right? And as a matter of formatting or display, remember to change the format mask to show this percentage sign if that's required by the client and all those. But otherwise, that's it for this lesson, unless Robert, you have something to add.
Thank you, Victor.
Thank you.